Rex Bloomstein is a documentary filmmaker whose work, mostly for the BBC, has raised public consciousness of issues that are central to our society. One of the markers of a civilized society is the treatment of those who have transgressed. The difficulty, of course, is that most of us have no opportunity to visit prisons which are not on view to the public. In recent decades, the person who has enabled us to peer inside prisons is Rex Bloomstein, whose first sequence of prison films, The Sentence, Release, Prisoners' Wives, and Parole, was broadcast in the 1970s. In 1980, he made Strange Ways, which was the recipient of 2 British Academy Awards, the Best Documentary Series and the Best Single Documentary. This was followed 2 years later by Lifer, an exploration of life sentence prisoners. Rex's access to Strange Ways prison was unprecedented, as he was given sufficient time there to allow the prisoners to become accustomed to the cameras and therefore to revert to normal behavior. The result was a revelation, and it was so powerfully presented that it has embedded itself in our cultural memory. 21 years later, in 2001, Rex organised a return visit with BBC's Time Watch, which was broadcast as Strange Ways Revisited. This in turn led to a film for Channel 4 called Lifer, Living with Murder, where he discovered that some of the prisoners who had appeared in the original Lifer film were still inside, while others were out in the community on licence. This was followed by another Channel 4 documentary called Kids Behind Bars. Now, in January of this year, Rex Bloomstein set aside his cameras to prepare a BBC Radio 4 documentary called Dying Inside, which examined the lives of elderly prisoners who faced the prospect of dying in prison. The fact that Britain has the largest prison population in Europe is well known. But which of us knew that the fastest growing age group within our population are older principals, old being defined as over 50, or that Her Majesty's Prison Norwich has an elderly lifer unit? Many of these elderly prisoners are sex offenders who have been convicted late in life, thanks to DNA techniques pioneered at this university, for crimes committed many years previously. The power of Rex Bloomstein's prison documentaries is a product of his directorial style. The sounds are not those of voiceover commentators or background music, but rather of prisoners' voices, which are direct and spontaneous and surprisingly honest. In Rex's hands, prisoners cease to be a category and become individuals who strongly resemble ourselves in their diversity. Now, Rex Bloomstein's reputation rests centrally on his work in prisons, but there are 2 other areas to which he has made a distinguished contribution: the history of persecution of Jews and the abuse of human rights. Auschwitz and the Allies, which he made in 1982, raised disturbing questions about the extent to which the Allies were aware of what was happening at Auschwitz-Birkenau long before it was liberated. He subsequently made a trilogy called The Longest Hatred, an account of the history of anti-Semitism, a poison that has not yet been extirpated from our society. Allied soldiers who had liberated the concentration camps became the subject of his next film called Liberation. In 2005, Rex made KZ, or KZ in German, which was the German wartime abbreviation for concentration camp. The film focused on the Austrian camp at Mauthausen-Wienerklaben. Rex stripped out the features that one expects in documentaries: commentary, archive footage, solemn music, instead concentrating on the complex interaction between an evil past and a present in which the Holocaust is shifting from memory to history. There is at one point a shot of some school children in the car park. A teenage girl wears CND earrings, and one of the boys gives a daring Nazi salute. There is no commentator to articulate the questions raised by the images. Should evil be suffered or resisted? Do Nazi sentiments live on? Later in the film, there's an image of visitors posing for photographs in front of the crematoria. There is no explicit comment on the transformation of the death camp into a tourist attraction and a photo backdrop opportunity. Instead, it is the juxtaposition of the material remains of the past and the people of the present that prompts the reflections of the viewer. The third theme that Rex has taken up is that of human rights abuse. His series, Prisoners of Conscience, which profiled individual prisoners around the world, ran for 5 years. More recently, his film, An Independent Mind, released in 2008, allowed 8 people to speak in response to Rex's questioning. The choices were always surprising. In China, it was a sex blogger rather than a political dissident. In Syria, it was a communist poet rather than an Islamist. And sometimes the choices were exceedingly controversial, notably the Holocaust denier David Irving. Most recently of all, in 2010, Rex made This Prison Where I Live. This is about Burma, but its subject is not the protracted house arrest of Aung San Suu Kyi. Instead, Rex chose to concentrate on the prison term, initially 59 years, reduced to 35, handed down to Zarganar, a Burmese comedian who dared not only to deploy laughter against the junta, but also to speak out against its crimes. The film was broadcast illegally in Burma some 6 weeks before he was released in October last year. It seems that Rex's film played a decisive part in the decision to release Zarganar. A few weeks ago, Rex was delighted to meet him in London. Rex Bloomstein had modest beginnings. He grew up in a poor Jewish family in Hackney, the son of a Polish father and a mother whose family had come from Russia. He has transformed the fragility of a childhood shadowed by poverty and racism into an art that penetratingly examines human bondage and suffering. He has honored this university by accepting an appointment as Honorary Visiting Fellow of our Department of Criminology and delivering a lecture at the Stanley Burton Center for Holocaust and Genocide Studies. Now it is our turn to honor his achievement. Mr. Vice-Chancellor, on the authority of the Senate and the Council, I present to you Rex Bloomstein that you may confer upon him the degree of Doctor of Letters.
I admit you to the degree of Doctor of Letters and welcome you among us. Many congratulations.
Thank you. To accept this award of an honorary doctorate from the University of Leicester is a particular pleasure for me. And I say particular because you are looking at someone who failed the 11 plus, as it was known, who then went on to achieve the grand total of 1 O-level out of 5. And obviously galvanized by that success, gained an English O-level at night school the following year. And there endeth my academic career, 2 O-levels. Thank heavens the University of Leicester has seen the light and rectified a grave wrong. I would genuinely have loved to have gone on to university. Unfortunately, too rare a journey to undertake in the late 1950s from a place like Hackney in the East End of London. But things were changing, and I eventually became part of a social revolution that took place in the 1960s, where many, many thousands of us from working class homes made our way into society. Yes, I would have loved to have gone to a university to make, I'm sure, friends for life, to have benefited from such stimulation and scholarship. but it was not to be. So my grateful thanks for this wonderful honor to the Vice-Chancellor, to Professor Yvonne Jukes, the head of a really excellent Department of Criminology, who is responsible for first inviting me to come to Leicester, to Professor Gordon Campbell for his oration, and finally, congratulations to all my fellow graduates today. May they have a better world to employ their talents. This is one graduate who is particularly happy to join them.